Thank you for choosing page 121. Today we're going to browse again inside the Traveler Companion Update 2024, and we're going to take a look at refereeing Traveler. And I'm not going to go through this in detail, but I want to talk a little bit about refereeing Traveler. Traveler is a skill-based system as opposed to hit points in combat and armor class as certain other systems are designed, and that can make it a little different for you to run. I came from a D&D background to Traveler. I was fortunate to have a really good Traveler GM for the first couple of years I was playing Traveler. I ran a little bit here and there, but not a ton. I took the campaign over after about 2 years, I think it was, and I've been the forever DM for Traveler since then. But refereeing Traveler is different than refereeing a lot of other games. I've refereed many games, and Traveler is its own beast. In my mind, I do more prep for Traveler than I generally will for another game. Not that I over prep or anything, or not that it's much worse or anything. It's just I do a lot more background reading because I want everything to be fresh. My players sit down at the table, much as they do enjoy Traveler, they haven't read this stuff. And for D&D and such over the years, of course, they've read a lot of it, so they know a lot of it. But if I'm introducing something in Traveler, I have to be ready for the fact that they haven't encountered it before. So to that end, I have to be ready. But the other trick to doing any kind of GMing at all of any game is you don't have to know everything. You have to know enough to run the game. Don't be afraid to jump into the rule books. If players come up with an idea you haven't thought of, or if they need a ruling on something, and you've got to take a minute or so to jump into the rule book and look something up just so you have consistency in your campaign, that's a fantastic thing to do. I've never had a problem with that. The other thing I'll often do in a game is, rather than slow things down, if we're in a kind of an exciting period of the play and I don't want to slow things down by browsing through rule books, I'll simply state, okay, tonight we're going to do it this way, and then in future I'm going to do some research and we're going to make a decision, and we'll make a final ruling for real afterward. But for tonight we're going to do it this way. I found that works really well, because you don't want to stop play just when it's gotten interesting because you need to look up a rule on something. So just go ahead and kind of wing it for that night, make it clear to your players you're winging it for that night, and then after that, go into the rule books, do your research, and make a final decision. Now, when I make a final decision on something like that, I go back to the table at the next game, and I tell my players, okay, last time we did it this way, this is what the rule books say, this is what I feel, this is how I want to do it. And I'll listen to counter arguments. And there are many times where I've said I wanted to do something this way or that way. My players have said, no, we should do it this way. And I've listened, and they've been right, and we've ended up doing it their way. But even if I don't feel they're right, if they all feel strongly about it, it is their table as well as mine. So unless it's something that's going to fundamentally break the game, I'll often just bow to group and say, okay, we'll do it that way from now on. So that's just a little bit of my style of refereeing Traveler. But the nice thing about Traveler is play balance really isn't an issue until you start getting your players a lot of money and a lot of tech. Then the play balance does kind of go out a little bit because your players become physically more powerful, more dangerous. They maybe get more political influence, more acknowledgement to the universe, that kind of thing. But that doesn't have to destroy your game. Play balance can still be a thing. You can have your players. I had my players start out as merchants. They became murder hobos and now are trying to become legitimate businessmen on a planet and trying to grab this otherwise patchwork government planet and kind of put their imprint on it and run things. And they're actually trying to run things for the good. They're not trying to just make all the money they can. They actually want to uplift this planet a little bit. Planet is Avastin in District 268 in the Spinwood Marches. They want to uplift this a little bit and make it a better place for all because they're smart enough to realize that they'll make a ton more money if they do that. So play balance is definitely a thing. Traveler comes kind of balanced, so that's one advantage this system has over a lot of others. And then building the Traveler universe, I have done my own Traveler universe. Intermittently, I've decided I was going to try a game here or try there, and I was going to whip up my own stuff. Honestly, I love the Third Imperium, and that's the universe I use. Creating human and alien societies can be daunting. This is not anything I would do as an early thing to do during my Traveler GMing career. I might whip it up a little bit, but keep it on the back burner, not necessarily introduce it until later in the campaign, just because I want to have a little bit more time under my belt with the players, with the campaign ideas, and see if what I've created is actually going to fit. You don't want to create an alien society that completely warps your game. If you create an alien society that's based entirely on psionics, that can completely change how your game goes. So you want to be careful about that. I do recommend doing it. It's a great fun exercise. I've made up many human races and alien species that I've never ever used just because I want to put a few ideas on paper. Multi-world empires can be a lot of fun, also known as pocket empires. These can be a lot of fun to have your players dealing with, especially if they're in the Third Imperium, especially if the active duty campaign I'm running, I'm going to have them deal with some of the local empires that are not part of the Third Imperium. That's going to be a lot of fun. That's a role-playing experience I'm looking forward to. And then you want to create the adventures. You just want to find out what I try to do is I find out what the expectation my players are. So what are they expecting when they sit down to play this game? In the initial game, I said, you guys are going to be merchants, and they said, okay, sounds good, and very quickly didn't want to do that and became pirates. But now in the active duty campaign, they're all very much invested in active duty, following the rules of the Third Imperium, following the rules of the Imperial Navy. I'm excited about that because it's a complete 180 from the campaign I had going. So creating the adventures for the active duty campaign is actually going to be a little easier for me than it was for the Murder Hobo campaign. But I am going to dovetail the two campaigns together. I'm going to have a couple of nights where certain players will play their merchants / murder hobos, and others will play their active duty characters, and I'll be interacting, and I'm looking forward to that. I've already warned them that's coming, and they're pretty excited about it, I think. And then adventure themes. You want to figure out what kind of theme you're going to do. And yes, any game you run, you really have to kind of have an idea, a theme in the background. What are you going to do? Are you going A to B, just travel overland or by starship from point A to point B? Is there a hostage situation? Is it a trade run, exploration? There's a lot of different things to choose from. Another reason Traveller is such a great game. Creeping horror is a lot of fun. It is hard to do horror in Traveller. One great place to really freak your players out doing any kind of horror is to put them in Jump Space. I had a game years ago that I ran. I've told this story before, so I apologize if you've heard it. But the player characters were aboard their ship. It was just a merchant ship. And this is a game I ran back 80s, early 90s. I don't remember exactly when. And while they were in Jump Space, after a little while in Jump Space, they started hearing what sounded definitely like scratching on the hull and scratching at the various hatches. Not all at once, just something would scratch and then move to another point and scratch and scratch. The entire time they were in Jump, they had what sounded like a creature trying to get in through the hull, through the hatches, just trying to get in at the players. I had them freaked out. They were skipping sleep. They were mounting guards at any kind of possible point of entry. It was a blast. At the end of it, when they came out of Jump Space, they found no evidence on the ship itself that anything had been out there except for one scratch on one hatch they couldn't account for. And that left them really freaked. So I enjoyed that because I never answered the mystery. I left it out there. I made them nervous as could be. And this was a decent chunk of the game. This is about an hour of a 3-hour game. And I made them nervous as could be. And that kind of set the tone for the rest of the night. I had them kind of on their heels the rest of the night. And that was kind of fun too. Sometimes as the GM, you never win. See the air quotes, you never win. But sometimes you want to tag the players a little bit and make them know they've been in a game. And that's really it for refereeing Traveller. There are many other things to do. This is a nice section to read over, especially if you're newer to Traveller or just getting back into it. This will give you a nice grounding in some solid ideas for a skill-based game. And I recommend it. I've been enjoying the heck out of the companion update. 2024, I've been dog-earing this thing because I've been coming up with different ideas for my campaigns. And I'm really happy I have this in my library. But that's all I've got to say today on page 121. I want to thank you for your time. Thanks for watching. Please leave any comments below, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Any idea for future videos? I always read them. I make no promises to act on them, but I do read them. Also, tell your friends. Let's grow the channel. Take a look at the Patreon, see if you can help me out there. But that's all I've got today on page 121. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.